Are you worthy of Christ? Dated January 21, 2024. Last week, I spoke to you regarding a self-analysis as to whether we lost track of Christ or not. This week, I'm here to put forward another topic for self-analysis. Yes, the title indeed is the topic that we're going to discuss. Are we worthy of Christ? You may be questioning, isn't salvation of Christ free? Isn't grace a gift? Works cannot get us salvation, right? We are sinners unworthy of Christ. You may also be quoting verses like Romans 5:8 to argue against my very topic. Well, you are absolutely right. We are unworthy of His saving grace, and indeed, it's a gift and not something obtained by works, lest any man boasts of his or her own salvation as something done by themselves. But what is it that I'm talking about? Any guesses? Discipleship. Yes, discipleship. There are several statements that Jesus makes in this very chapter that talks about being His disciple. The cost of discipleship, persecutions, confessing Christ before men, etc. But I'm going to be focusing on something very specific. Before I go into it, let me put forward a few truths. We might have accepted Christ in our hearts and be saved, but we cannot stop there. We shouldn't. If we get saved and just stay there, you become stagnant. As you know, stagnant water stinks and is a breeding ground for all kinds of harmful organisms. The same is the case in our spiritual lives too. A Christian life without growth becomes a breeding ground for all evil. James emphasizes throughout his letter how a Christian with just faith is dead. Faith without works is dead. That's his exact statement in James 2:26. In Matthew 10:16, Jesus tells us how He is sending His disciples into a pack of wolves. So, if we are living a life where we just accepted Christ, but do not grow in Him to become His disciple, then this verse would not mean us, right? But this verse puts forth two groups, sheep and wolves. If we are not sheep, then of course we are wolves trying to put on the disguise of a sheep by using God for our selfish gain. Then we truly aren't His children, but just fake followers. So if we are His elect, His children, we must not be stagnant. Rather, we must be diligent in making our Father God proud of us. Matthew 10:32 tells us how Christ will confess us before God if we confess Him before men. We mustn't be stagnant spiritually, but rather grow as a disciple of Christ. So let us get back to the topic at hand. Are we worthy of Christ as His disciples? Matthew 10:37 and 38 puts forward very few, that is exactly two conditions that need to be met for us to be worthy of Christ as His disciples. Firstly, Matthew 10:37, "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." He expects us to love Him as our first priority. Nobody else is above or equal to Him. In our lives, no family member, friend, spouse, or even our own selves should compete or overtake our priority towards God. Only if we love Him the most do we become worthy of Him. Also, you would do anything for the one you love. So how much more would you do for the one you love the most? That is what He is asking, which brings me to the second statement of Christ, that is, Matthew 10:38. "And he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me." Take up our own cross? What does that mean? Not evangelism or bearing with some sin or infirmity. No. Verse 39 that follows this narrows it down, giving context as to what He means by taking up His cross. Yes, exactly. To be ready to lose one's own life for His sake. We would never do that for anyone we normally live with, which shows us that we would be ready to do that only if we love Him as our first priority. We can say, "I will lose my life for Christ." Mere statements don't matter. Only when you face or taste a little of the fear of death would you understand its magnitude. Here is a quote from a wrestler, Mark William Calloway, aka The Undertaker. A quote that has always been one of my favorites, and I do guess the quote does put forward the point I'm trying to make. The fear of death is far greater than death itself, but the fear of the unknown is the greatest fear of all. I could go on talking about things, but I would like to stop here and leave you with my request to analyze yourself. Think and see. Is God your first priority? Do you live your life in a way that proves that He is your most loved one? Also analyze to what lengths your love extends. Are you ready to lose everything you've earned till now? Everything you have right now? Are you ready to lose it all for His sake? No gain, just lose it all for the love you have for Him. Think. It's important. You know why? Because Jesus Himself has said that these two are what makes you and me worthy of Him. Nothing else. No matter what you do, it just doesn't matter. Unless you love Him above all and are ready to take up your cross and follow Him into suffering and persecution for His name. May God be with you.